All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar on contract catering in 2025, where we will be discussing how the industry of catering is changing. And for that, we have three very great guests. I have three very nice guests with me today, being Sandra Rijswijk from Vermaat, Daniel Corlett from ISS in the UK, John Alef being the co-founder and strategic account executive of Pay, and myself, I'll be the moderator of today. My name is Carl Jacobs. I'm co-founder at Apicbase. Good morning, everybody. Before we jump into the panel discussion itself, I think it's good that we introduce ourselves quickly to the audience. For that, everybody has a few slides prepared. I'll get this going with John, who is going to introduce Pay first. And after the introduction, we'll go ahead with the panel discussion and with the Q&A. John, the floor is yours.
Thanks. And for everyone who's read the invite, might notice that it's my name instead of Victor, our CEO, who was supposed to take part of this, but he had to run off in a last-minute accident, and so I'm covering for him, which is awesome for me. I get to do what I like the most, talk to all of you about contract catering. And so to talk about Pay, Pay is a SaaS software company, and we focus a lot on the guest experience. And for many, we introduced them to the concept of guest and guest data in the contract catering. And we also focus on doing that at scale, minimizing admin for operators. And the core concept is moving to a dedicated guest management platform. It's a platform that covers everything around guest data from a loyalty perspective, but also from an employer and client perspective, and also guest interfaces and how do guests order meals. And we, if you would structure our product offering into 4 categories, as I mentioned before, like how do you receive a plated dish? How do you receive a meal? So digital ordering, or how do you optimize the actual process of being in the canteen and ordering a meal? And the other part is like, who picks up that plate? And how do we optimize for that? And so once again, that's partly the employer or the client. So guest management in terms of getting the right employees, having the right meal benefits program, identifying in the right way, but also optimizing for who takes the plate from the operator's perspective. How can you, as an operator, drive loyalty or improve your operations based on guest data and guest feedback as well? And once again, doing this at scale. Yep. Oh, and here's a really good example. So here is Gabby, and Gabby has, for example, a meal benefit, and she has a coffee benefit as well. So every day she gets a barista-made nice coffee to incentivize her to get back to the office. And also she has some kind of representation identifier as well, so she can order to a conference room and get fika for a sales meeting. But there's also, but there's also, let's say you're updating the menu. You're doing changes to improve all meals. And Gabby has shown that she's interested in the vegetarian option. So she specifically gets a discount on her previous behavior. She's a vegetarian. She gets a discount to incentivize her to try the new meal, and then afterwards getting her feedback on that specific meal as a vegetarian with her purchasing history. So that's like how we introduce the guest in the whole concept of contract catering and improve and optimize around that.
All right. Thank you very much, John, for the brief introduction on Pay. Obviously, if people have questions specifically on Pay, they are free to just contact John, and he'll be talking about everything Pay has to offer. Next up is Sandra Rijswijk from Vermaat. She'll be introducing Vermaat as a catering business. Sandra, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Well, my name is Sandra Rijswijk, and within Vermaat, I'm a digital transformation manager. So spending all my days working on innovations within our industry together with my team, and personally focusing mainly on optimizing and supporting F&B analysis. Now, Vermaat is a specialist in tailored catering. It started in the late 70 years of the past century as a small delicacy store, and it grew out to be the largest caterer in the Netherlands, but also extended towards Germany, France, and even Belgium in the last couple of years. And we have a variety of services we offer. So besides contract catering, we are also into catering for hospitals, catering for musea, amusement parks, up to catering into small convenience stores like Stag. And what we do, our mission or our vision is that we believe there's still a lot to win in our world of food and beverage. That's the next slide. And what we mean with that is that we think we can do still so much more for our guests, for our clients, and for our employees. And we believe that we have the mission to make the guest enjoy each and every single meal that we have at every place, at every time. And we do that under our vision of our food vision. And that's that we want to cater to the future together. And that means that we have sustainability very high in our mission statement, in our vision. And that means that we want to give each and every client, guest, and employee the best experience in an even more healthy, more sustainable way than before. And from our digital strategy, that means that we want to be data-driven in every aspect that we are doing, with the guest at the center of our minds. Yes, thank you.
Sorry for that, Sandra. Next up is Daniel, who is working with ISS in the UK. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carl. Great to be here and to be sharing with you a little bit today about my journey and also about the journey that we're on at ISS. I suppose firstly, just a little bit about me. I'm the Managing Director of Workplace Services at ISS, and I'm responsible for our food services, for our workplace experience, and for our sustainability services that we've offered. I've been in the food service industry for over 20 years. I actually started in the late 90s with Gardner Merchant, if anyone remembers them as an organization, and then moving on to Sodexo, and then latterly with ISS. It's a wonderful industry, and it's one that I've thoroughly enjoyed being part of for over the last 20 years. What you might not necessarily realize is that ISS has a long history of managing food services. And while we're maybe recognized for many other services that we do, we're actually quite a big deal when it comes to food. We're the 5th largest caterer, and around 12% of our global revenues actually comes from food services. So just a little bit of a flavor in terms of us, of ISS, and where we are today. Thank you. Just next slide. Thanks, Carl. So I think something that I continually remind my team about, and something that we're all facing, is that the change is inevitable, and it's happening at an accelerated rate that we've probably never seen before. We're consuming more data than we've ever consumed before, and as a result of that, we know, and something that I'm really kind of passionate about is that we know that we, as a food service industry, need to catch up with the high street and with the overall market. We certainly lag, I believe, in that kind of position. So it's something just as a kind of mantra that I have, in terms of that we continually need to innovate, we continue to need to drive our business forwards in terms of from a change perspective. And you might say, how do we do that, and what's our kind of what are our kind of key trends and some of the kind of key areas that we're focusing on? And I think the next slide just touches on 4 of those key themes that we've started to talk about in ISS, and areas that are pertinent to us. And the first of these is well-being. And I think collectively our kind of current thinking approach to well-being is evolving. We've been siloed and archaic And we need to shift our thinking far more to consider whole person health. Well-being is personal, and people don't want to be told what's good and what isn't good for them. And so therefore, as an organization and as food service providers, we need to be able to meet our guests in terms of where they are, in terms of what they want from a well-being and from a health perspective. The second is around choice. And I know we'll kind of touch on these when we get into the kind of the guest, the kind of panel conversation a little bit later. But you know, choice is significant in terms of our place. You know, we're not as we're trying to provide so much choice in our workplaces and the environments that we offer, whether it's, you know, breakfast, mid-morning, lunch, afternoon, and sometimes evening, and the hospitality and everything else that goes with it. The choice and variety that we have to provide is immense. And then additional to that, we're also dealing with, you know, generational needs and behavioral need changes that happen within our sectors, and also the varying different cuisines as well. So understanding choice and being able to make the right decisions in terms of what we offer and when are key to what we do in our services and the products that we offer. The second part, and I think this is why I have such a great role in ISS, and the fact that it's not just about food services and it covers workplace. And we're seeing this shift in terms of community and the spaces that we create. You know, I think going back many years, the canteen, the restaurant was a designated place to go and eat, and that has completely changed with hybrid working, and sometimes a reduction of the workplace and the office footprint. So those environments are now a place to be able to have informal meetings, to catch up with colleagues, to connect, and maybe to reconnect. So creating that environment which goes far beyond just the delivery and an offering of food is again something that is key to our proposition, and also is around an area where people come together. It's about community, and I think that's what we're seeing now in terms of as the restaurant of the future that we're creating. And then finally, innovation. You know, we touched on the high street, and the food service industry has kind of woken up to technology and the advancement of omni-channel experiences where customers can buy in advance, check out using AI, scan tills, and understand the impact of their food consumption is having on the planet through carbon calculators. The list is endless in terms of what consumers want, and the changes of innovation. And we need to be able to make sure that we bring those to the customer in terms of the offerings and the products that we're creating. So just a little bit about what we're doing in ISS, and to say, looking forward to kind of talking more about these as we get into the discussion.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for this short introduction. For those who don't know Apicbase yet, let me also take a moment to introduce Apicbase to the audience. At Apicbase, we are committed since 10 years, something like that, on contributing to a more sustainable food service industry, pushing our customers to zero waste and a healthier bottom line. We do that by focusing on 4 different areas within our customers' business. The first one being operational excellence, and has everything to do with centralizing and standardizing the way you work within your organization. This goes from, you know, centralizing your recipes, but also the way you count, the way you order. Everything can be actually done in a structured and standardized way. So it gives you insights in the way of working and understanding in the data much more easily. The second pillar, obviously, is the margin improvement, which is basically focusing on probably the most important for any company, which is a healthier bottom line. If you succeed in implementing a software like Apicbase, you will get a better bottom line because you will be able to drag your costs down. The third pillar being food safety and compliance is something that is often regarded as less sexy, but more and more important for our customers, because it is not just about allergens anymore. There's the whole traceability that is coming up, the HACCP controls that need to be done, everything to make sure that the food that you offer to your customers is actually safe and you don't get sick from it. And the final pillar is the sustainability pillar, and that has to do with everything around your ESG metrics and making sure that your CO2 footprint is clear and understandable, but also that you know what you're wasting and where you're wasting it, and you can actually actively work on this. In that regard, is Apicbase a preemptive system? You register what you're wasting, but you also order in a much better way, so you normally have less waste at the end as well. Now, we've built an entire universe around this, so there's a lot of different modules which we've built. I won't go into all of them, but the idea is actually that there is one software that runs your back of house, and the most important piece of this slide might actually be the API, which is basically the tool that you can use, or the language that you can use to get all of the data that is within Apicbase into any other platform that you're using. And I believe that's the most important thing you have to take away in any case. It is when you're looking into digitization, you have to find ways and softwares that actually are open for collaboration and not closed systems. Especially today, I think you as a catering business are the owner of your own data, and Apicbase is merely a tool to gather that data and then use that data throughout your organization in many different systems that you're using. Now, that is the end of the introduction. That leaves 40 minutes to have a beautiful panel discussion. But before we go into that panel discussion, I have two things I wanted to give to the audience. The first one is we actually wrote an ebook on together with Pay on catering services and how they are changing, with a lot of testimonials, a lot of insights that we've gathered with our customers and with other businesses in the market. And you will all be receiving that one after the presentation or after the webinar. And obviously, if you like it, give it a thumbs up or let us know, and that makes us very happy. And the second thing is, from time to time, we will be popping up a poll on your screen, and please feel free to fill this out so we can see, get a little bit of a feel of where you are in terms of catering and dealing with some of the issues that we will be discussing today. Now, first things first, let's go into the first question of the day, being this lovely image. We call it back then and now. On the one hand, we have the old situation, the one that we all come from, being catering, just needing to deliver great meals and a nice taste. And today we still need to do that. But we have so much extra regulations and things we need to take care of. I believe, Daniel, you as an experienced catering professional must have some kind of idea with this image.
Yeah, I've seen this image a few times now, Carl, and I'm going to steal it with pride from you, I think, because I think it kind of depicts very, very nicely in terms of where we've come from and where we're moving to now. I think again on both fronts, great quality food is paramount then, and it is now. That's the constant. But as you say, there are so many different areas now that we need to start to focus on and to really understand at various different levels. And I think what's what's driven that, and be good to have this conversation, is I think if you go back kind of 10, 15 years, we operate in a B2B4C market. And we were very, I suppose, because of the level of subsidies, if you go back in kind of time, the control of managing our food services was very much via the client. And so therefore, the closeness that we got to our end consumers, if you like, was actually in some ways quite remote. I know our chefs and probably our frontline staff were talking on a day-to-day basis with the consumers, but true interaction and immersive interaction with our with our consumers was less. And I think over time, as those subsidies have, our clients and have looked to be able to reduce those subsidies, and we've seen technological advances, as you said, the greater focus and need on allergen management. We've got Natasha's Law here in the UK. All of these particular areas, every single one of them, we can go through them, have required us to get, one, far greater understanding of data. When I say data, it's it's the recipes, it's the understanding and the full kind of descriptors that are a part of those recipes. But as part of that as well, it's enabled us, and we've had to get closer to the actual consumer as well, in terms of the solutions that we're offering, the technology that we're bringing, the apps, the digital approach, etc., to be able to do that. So I think that's a significant shift in terms of that we've seen over time. And just kind of looking at those bottom few as well is that kind of flexibility and convenience. We're now, again, hate still talking about COVID and pandemic times, but I think that again had a significant mark in terms of the acceleration of certain technologies and the way that we deliver our services. But I think technology is and the approach is going to significantly change the way that we serve and deliver food across our accounts. I think we might, I think going back many years, it was lots of counters, food out on the kind of on those counters, and obviously our wonderful consumers and guests kind of came and helped themselves. And I think over time, we started to move to batch cooking again, to be able to help reduce waste. And I think moving forwards, I really see a shift towards kind of moving more towards on-demand cooking and practices with the utilization of technology.
And Daniel, this change, is this a customer-driven change, or is this a, let's say, law-driven change, or where is the change actually originating?
I think all of them. I think there's legislative changes that have impacted in terms of what we do, and mentioned previously about allergen management and understanding the dietary requirements. I think that's driven greater utilization of food management systems and working far greater and closer with our suppliers in terms of to understand the products and the ingredients as well. So I think some of it is legislative changes that have driven that. Some of it is the change of the dynamics with clients around the subsidies and the kind of the approach that they've taken. So I think that's another kind of factor. And then I think just advancement in technology as well, and the way that we deliver and food. I think we're constantly looking at the high street, our competitors, of course, and just seeing how we can improve and elevate the experiences that we provide to our consumers.
All right, Sandra, how do you experience this change at Vermaat?
Yeah, I think we see the same things changing. What we notice very much, specifically in contract catering, is that shift from having a certain time slot that you go downstairs to the canteen and get, or the cafeteria, and get the food that you want. People are now demanding more and more to be able to pick out beforehand on an app and have it delivered or have it being picked up at a certain time slot. So the time that people want to spend on looking and getting their food is completely different nowadays. So really requesting a different approach to setting out and providing the meals and the experience to our guests. And of course, at the same time, you have a more and more data requirements legally, of course, the ESG reports that require you a lot of data based on whatever you do in your restaurant. But it also gets from the guests that want to know whether the things that they buy fit their dietary requirements, if it fits their sports regimen that they're following. And I think that that's really a difference than with a couple of years ago. And that is requiring a lot more from us as a caterer.
And how does that weigh on you as a catering business? And then I talk also about, there once was a time you had a chef at a location doing whatever he liked, basically. Today, how is that actually, changing? Is there any change there?
There is a change there. Of course, you see it's getting more and more difficult to get the really good chef cooks in. That's one thing. And on the same hand, one of the main things that we at Vermaat has is that we want to tailor everything we have towards our client and the guest at that specific location. So what we are struggling with is that struggle, because I love that challenge, is to get all that data that is required, and I think rightfully required by our guests and by our clients, and still enabling our chef cooks on the one hand that are still at our locations to still get their creativity and their flexibility to tailor it and to cater specifically to their client and guests. So there's actually two sides of it that you want to combine together in order to be able to give all that data, to retrieve all that data as well. Because now we're just talking about the guest experience and the data they want, but we want to get a lot of data from the guest as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that we really are figuring out and trying out how to do. And one of the things we are doing, or what we are experiencing with and are pretty successful with, is making sure that we have our joint program part, in which we have a group of cooks really figuring out tailoring specific menus for different locations, different guests, and getting all the data in there, and then supply that to our guests through the app, that they can really pick out what they want and what time they want to have it being picked up to eat. So there are ways there to deal with both those guest requirements, but also the flexibility our chef cooks want and need, I think, in their profession, and still being able to scale it up and dealing with less available chef cooks. IT is difficult to get personnel in, but within the chef and the catering industry, it's even more difficult. So that's things we need to deal with, and that's a shift you see.
Yeah. I think from a very similar, Sandra, from a UK perspective and what we see. I mean, there's certainly some of our competitors in the UK market, Carl, that very much focus and a mantra is that it's chef led and chef created on an individual site. I think they tend to be the smaller contract caterer kind of organizations that do that. I think when you start to think about scale, it becomes far more challenging to be able to do that when you're individually kind of reliant on those chefs, because of the lack of skills and kind of chefs that are available in the kind of marketplace in terms of that can do that. And I suppose there's risk associated with it as well in terms of managing some of the allergens and the other elements attached to that as well. I think our approach is that we operate in three kind of key markets in the UK. We operate in education, we operate in healthcare, and we operate in the corporate service environment. And within education and within healthcare, our menus and what we create is quite prescriptive, very prescriptive in terms of what the menus are and how that's worked. We have a fantastic team of central nutritionists and chefs that create those menus and those recipes for those teams on the site to be able to follow. In our corporate services environment, we take a slightly different approach. We have different brands that we've created, and as part of that, we have menus and we call it freedom within a framework, but we have menus and we have recipes that are attached to that, and then we allow our chefs on some of those sites to be able to tailor and to flex slightly, because obviously they're very close to their guests on those particular sites. So not necessarily a one size fits all in terms of how we approach it, but you know, our philosophy and our view here is that, you know, we're very reliant on our food management system and our central teams who spend an awful lot of time looking at insights, researching in terms of kind of culinary trends, etc., and making sure that we are, you know, we're evaluating that and we're reflecting that in the menus and the recipes that we create.
From a technology point of view, how would you you know, go about in making sure that all of this is actually you know, executable basically, because in the past we've seen, let's say, point solution being installed, you know, because the customer required something. Daniel, how would you kind of recommend businesses to go about and make sure that this is a fitting technology landscape?
Yeah, it's a great point, and you know, sometimes you have to go backwards before you can go forwards. You know, we've made the in various different areas, we've made the error sometimes to put consumer facing technology in too soon, because and you know, it's not fully connected to our back of house systems that we've created, and therefore sometimes created more complexity and challenges in terms of then how we operate and how we manage our business. So and something that we've done over the last 6 months at ISS is conduct a full review of our systems today, how they connect, what they do, where are the manual interventions, if any, what do those connections, you mentioned the APIs, how do they work, is it working effectively, and doing a kind of full root and branches approach in terms of that landscape. And then from there, it's kind of you know, with a view of where we want to go. So there's always kind of, you know, you can do these things sometimes just because for the sake of doing it, but it's with the full view and approach of being able to advance the solutions that we can put in front of our consumers, because we know that they want to be able to have you know, loyalty subscriptions. They want to be able to have the promotions at the touch of a button. We want to be able to engage and talk to our consumers on a far more regular basis than we do today. Yeah, I'd love to be able to see us being able to think about, you know, maybe they could vote for what the menus and the recipes they were going to see in the restaurant in the kind of week ahead. That type of stuff, you know, real engagement with our consumers. But you can't do that until you've got your kind of core systems fully in place and being able to support that. So yeah, that's where we are in our kind of journey at the moment, is really kind of we've spent some time really kind of reviewing and assessing where we are today.
All right, John, from a front of house perspective, what are the changes that you are experiencing, and what are the questions you're getting from your customers?
Well, first, I just kind of like want to comment on what you mentioned, Daniel, that like you got the question, does this come from like a consumer or from a client perspective, the changes that we see? And it's interesting to hear you talk, because it's from like a production perspective, like how do we get the right meals done? And from us coming from kind of like the guest perspective a lot, the trend that we see that kind of ticks all the boxes here is the rise of culture and the change of HR into people and culture and employee branding and talent acquisition and those kind of words. And that is in itself getting rid of the fixed and static 40% subsidy that you're mentioning, Daniel. And we see instead that needs to be personalized, might need to reflect our company culture. And when that changes, and that is also more individually, how is that received? Innovation, like in any type of tender or bid that comes out, it's like, what is your take on innovation? How can we, by using you, ISS and Vermaat, be perceived as more innovative? So from our perspective, it's like very driven by a change in culture within companies and seeing the individual and making it more personal.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, John. Moving on to the next question. We can also come back to things later on if we want. We see that obviously there is a lot of data within organizations, and they're in different silos. They're actually, if you don't manage them, you get a lot of chaos and a lot of data which you can't do anything with. So Sandra, how do you do that at Vermaat, and what's the, let's say, what's the goal of having that much data at your fingertips?
Yeah. Well, that's what we want the most, based also from our strategy or from digital strategy, is really having all the right data in the right format at the right time. Well, that's very easily said and very difficultly done.
It sounds good.
It sounds very good, and it's a long way to go. And that has to do that if you look at the catering business, data travels very long way. If you look from the guest perspective back, it requires data all coming through the whole chain up until the suppliers and back again. So if you then look, is that it goes through a lot of different types of applications, because you have nearly all providers, all parts of that chain have some sort of an application. Normally you can pick quite a few from them, but they're not aligned together yet. And then you have all the data maybe at some places getting in, and it will be used by different applications, but very often also by humans. As I said, the chef cooks that you have that kind of require the data to be prepared, to be scrambled, cooked, diced, and plated the same way as that the recipes do. So that has a lot of challenges in order to have all that data combined, picking the right data out of it, because in the end, sometimes you have not enough data, but most of the time you have way too much data, but in all different types of formats and different systems. So what we are really working on now is getting all that data into one system to have that right analysis done. And that requires a lot of cooperation throughout the whole chain. It requires all the different types of applications and application providers that we have to give that opportunity to use a certain data model, to use standards in order to be able on the end for our BI teams to get everything together, to mix it, to combine it, and to analyze it. Because in the end, that's what we want. Not just provide our guests, of course, with all the information, but we also want to have all the analysis done on seeing what are we doing, how much food waste do we have, and how can we reduce that. So you need so much different types of information coming from all different, very nice types of applications and providers. But in the end, I need to have it actually in one system, one screen, one report, and preferably near real time. And step by step, we're going there. As Daniel already said, you first, before you can do this, your base, your fundament needs to be correct. And that's looking at the state of the industry we are in, really focusing mainly on providing our guests with the best meals possible. That's the biggest challenge, I think, for our industry. Getting that basic level of fundament of how do you store your data? What data are you going to share through what technologies? That's the biggest challenge we're looking into now.
Would it be fair to say, Daniel, that this means that from an organizational point of view, you're transforming from an army of chefs into an army of data analysts? Or maybe that's a bit too far, but let's say you see this shift from, having, again, chefs, people cooking, having the meals, to, understanding the data and really changing the organizational structure almost of a catering business.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to offend a few if I say if I agree to that entire statement, Carl, in terms of saying that but I know,
and it's not like
you
that,
put me
of
on.
course.
You teed me up there nicely, thank you. But we really do need. We work very closely with our IT and our kind of systems teams, because we need. This is a team effort, and it requires it requires lots of different divergent skills to be able to ultimately get to where we need to get to. And yes, we do need those IT and those experts and data experts, and respecting data, I think, is probably another part of it. I think, probably, there's probably been times where we haven't paid enough attention to the data and what happens to it, and what happens to it when it goes into different systems, etc. So I think, yeah, absolutely, we do need to, and I'm sure most companies are, but ramp up in terms of the support and the and our teams that can help us in the in this kind of technology kind of side of things. And it's interesting what Sandra was saying as well, in terms of, I was reflecting when Sandra was talking, and you kind of think about, not that many years ago, in terms of what you were reporting on from a data perspective. And we're just completing a piece of exercise within our team, and we're looking at all of the recipe and menu attributes that we want to be able to see, and it's pages long. It's not just one or two fields. You think about traceability of the ingredients, so sourcing, is it local, is it come from an SME, is it women-owned organization? You think then all about the allergen and the nutritional information, line by line, and then being able to kind of attach some of those to particular other attributes. So does it contribute to your 5 a day? Is it plant based? Does it what does the what can we report on in terms of from those aspects? Is it low carbon? What's the carbon calculation of the particular ingredient? There are so many attributes in terms of that we're looking at now, and I think as well, that's where we are today. And I think when we're thinking about systems and we're thinking about building these things, we need to make sure that it's not, to your point at the start, it's not fixed. There needs to be a level of being able, the open source, and being able to kind of add and to build upon it, because that we're continually trying to be able to meet the demand of our consumers. So therefore, we need to be able to have that flexibility in the way that we work and how we continue to work, to be able to make sure that we can meet and exceed their expectations.
I hear a lot of respect for the chef, which is great, Daniel.
I don't know who's in the audience, so
no, but I think the answer is in the middle. Of course, I was a little bit provocative, but
yeah,
there is a change, but it's not a change away from chefs.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think you think about that kind of the culinary chef individuals that we have in a lot of our accounts. Used to be that you just being a great chef was good enough. Now I think the chef and chef managers and the role of the operations teams has become far broader than it's ever been. And it goes back to the slide that you had before about it was always just about, if you had great food and it tasted great, then that was good enough. But now the demand on the reporting, on the optimizing of the service, understanding, we've got hybrid working has massively impacted and disrupted our industry in terms of you don't have that predictability of the same number of people coming through your restaurant or through your buildings on a day-to-day basis. How do you ramp up, ramp down, and manage that varying peak in terms of provision? So we're asking our kind of teams, our operations teams, to be retailers, to be financial, kind of have a good understanding of kind of financial and data aspects of their business, if you like, in terms of how they manage it. So the skills and requirements of our operational teams is we're asking a lot more of them than we probably have done it before. So there's a huge part in this around that change management.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more, actually. It is a multidisciplinary job these days, working at catering businesses. Moving on to a next slide. Obviously, we've established some of the challenges that we're all facing. It's the chaos in data, getting the data together, and obviously the change in roles and all of that, but what's actually working? And John, if you want, please be my guest and give your opinion and view on what is working today and how you see customers benefit from a technological implementation.
Well, also kind of to segment over from the last slide, like from Daniel's and Sandra's perspective, I know it's challenging for you to sort out this data challenge and the requirements from clients, but giving the difficulties that you sit with, menu change every day, new items on the menu every day. We don't see that in the rest of food and beverage. You, Daniel, say you want to challenge like high street, rest of food and beverage. Contract catering is doing a great job. So we usually, when we come in to talk to contract caterers, we bring the concept of guests. So you might have had some kind of subsidy, but it's not linked to individuals. We bring that. To answer like what works, what's innovative, what is when you take that nutritional data or sustainability data into the hands of the guest and you make it personal. And there's so many caterers out there who's like maybe not 100% implemented. There's still a lot of things to do, but they have a lot of the pieces of the puzzle figured out already in terms of like what data do we need to put in the hands of the guest. But there is just connecting the two endpoints, I think, is where like we're starting to see like the innovation and like what's really interesting. So moving from, let's say you have a loyalty program, we're going to give 10% discount on this for recurring guests, and you change that into ESS launch as a reaction to the airplanes mile benefits. The more you fly, the more points you get, and you do instead the healthier you eat, or the more green you eat, the more points you get, and then you connect it really. Yeah. Or if Vermaat would say, or you have a dietary goal and you want to change your diet, give us that goal and we will help you achieve it. And that is really then connecting the two endpoints. And we will see that happening in 2025. Like we're really, really close to move from just measuring waste into like creating a market for it, which I think is super exciting.
Yeah.
Sandra, what's your take on that?
Well, I think I agree. I think what we see in the last couple of years is that really getting that loyalty in with our client, with our guests. So really trying to get them to feel personally connected to what we are supplying, and that's what we are offering them, and that's helping so much more. And you see that actually also being the request from our clients, because of course, well, we mentioned the COVID period, but I think one of the greatest challenges that we get from our clients is their ask of getting employees back to the workplace. And food is, having a meal together. There's no better way than to connect, than having that meal together, having a good meal together. So you want to get those people in, and you want to give them that extra nudge, give them that extra connection, personalization. And by connecting all those dots together, I think that's how we're going to do that, and how we're going to make it possible to make even more impact for our guests on a personal level.
All right. Intermediate remark. We are approaching the end of the conversation here. So if there are questions in the audience, feel free to already post them so we can address them at the end of the webinar. All right. Maybe I hear a lot of very interesting thoughts, and one of those is that it is indeed obviously the customer, the end user, the end consumer, the guest, Sandra, the guest is still central, or should be the most central in the whole experience. And what I see is that you get this journey, and you kind of have the natural tendency to track it back and start with the guest, and then deliver some tools to that guest, and then you go one step back and you try to fill up that guest those guests up with something, and then you end in the back of house where you kind of realize that, oh, I need to kind of get that in order first. So is it right to say that maybe it's better to start from the beginning and get your basic data right first, and then build up from there, rather than just implement a solution somewhere at the end of the journey, and ending up with a lot of spaghetti between data that could be solved when you go bottom up?
For me, it goes hand in hand. As it's still a discovering journey that we're taking to really figuring out what the guests want, and at the same time, having what you call that back office in place. That's not just for the guest alone. We need that as well. We want that as well. So it's really the two sides of the scale that you want to approach together. You need to put that together and figure out exactly what you need. As I said, or as Daniel said before, I think one size does not fit all, and I think that continues to go on and will not change within the catering industry. So you need to try out, figure out what's going on, and really look into both sides to figure out what you want and what you need. And that does require quite a good connection and working together with all those different stakeholders you have outside and inside of your organization, and taking it step by step, learning, think big. So with that whole end state in mind, from A to Z and back again, from guest towards supplier, but also from supplier to guest again. But start with the small parts in the beginning. You can try to build it up.
I think that I totally agree. I think I think from on all system side of things, I think being agnostic in terms of how and what you can connect to, I think is key. And it's almost a bit like the kind of plumbing analogy. I think if your piping is if you've got the piping in kind of the right places and it flows the right way, then what kind of connects at the end of that, it should kind of just it would work far greater. I think the hardest part is that you put the end parts in without the plumbing is sometimes where it kind of falls apart a little bit. So I think you can work agile in the different areas, but I think it's being very open in terms of what that, if you want to connect to this, what does the data flow look like? What's the kind of the rules of engagement in terms of, you need to be able to kind of from an API and from a connectivity perspective, how it's going to work. But I think that's the way forward. I think, we connect to lots of different systems in that overall ecosystem of our, what we call kind of food management. And the ones that work the best are the ones where they have that open approach in terms of that open source, in terms of the way that they are accepting and receiving data.
John, can we conclude that it means that we need to make sure that the systems that we build, that they talk to each other and that the data can flow back and forth?
Well, it really future-proofed the ecosystem. But and I totally agree with what Daniel and Sandra are saying. But I think from the industry in itself could be more open to failure. And like if you're trying to please the end guest, also the definition of what is right, what we want to achieve, also lies with that end guest, and not in a meeting room where you're figuring out, regardless of how much experience you have. Like, you need to get out there and not only figure out everything and then invest a lot and launching it, but be open to, we're going to experiment, or we failed, okay, we're going to do something else, but not fail at scale, obviously. But it's part of the game when you work with end guest and digitalization. And I think the operators and the contract catering can engage more in startups and learn a bit from that mentality. And everyone loves the guest. Everyone wants to make them happy. As long as you share that with each other, I think moving quicker to the end guest is achievable and beneficial, perhaps.
All right, thank you very much, John. And on those notes, let's move into the Q&A and to the end of our webinar. Actually, at this moment, the questions are rather limited, so happy to take one, which is actually a very good one, both to Daniel and Sandra. Could you mention a concrete example of a recent digital innovation that you are proud of and which actually worked out? Question by Henry.
There are quite some. I think one I'm particularly proud of is that we introduced in one of our amusement park, really that ability for our guests to order via an app very easily and making sure that they have their food on time. So this is specifically for if you're coming there with those school trips. And we make it possible for them to really be able to schedule it and make sure that everything gets on time, get paid easily. So not having that mom or dad that's with that small group sitting there, but having that done via the app through the school part. And I think that that's one of the biggest impact for our guests with a digital innovation that works very good.
Yeah, I think rather than not maybe talking about individual kind of the companies that we partner with, I think we've got we've done some fantastic work with a number of digital solutions, and I think the key to it from an implementation, and I think what I'm most pleased about is when we look at it from a consumer journey perspective and the touch points, and then you go into the site and you can see that we've put in the kiosk for order ahead. You can see the digital screens that kind of replicate exactly what's supposed to be on there with the right information, the allergen information and everything else. And then also the ability through the app to be able to do click and collect, click and delivery. We've done some work with, but it's probably more delivery to kind of particular hubs rather than to the individual desk, because it becomes quite challenging. But I think those I have a big smile on my face when I go into some of those environments and I see the transformation that we've made in terms of, truly rethinking the customer journey in terms of from a digital perspective. It's not just putting an app in, it's truly kind of understanding what the needs are from a consumer perspective and remapping it. And I think the next phase of that will be also then to kind of reconsider how we actually change the physical delivery of our food environments as well. I mean, I think, going back a few years, but there were very much around lots of counters with lots of brands above each of those counters. And I think we're going to start to move towards, more being, as you see on the high street, where you're ordering via the kiosk and you're going to the counter to pick up and kind of reutilizing that space in a very different way. But that's probably what I'm most proud of at the moment.
All right, thank you very much. These are two very nice examples to end the webinar on, because we're over time, and that leaves me by thanking Sandra, Daniel, and John for joining us today in this webinar on catering. Also, thank you very much to the audience for staying with us and listening through this interesting webinar. This webinar will be shared online at our website and at the Pace website. And if there are any questions, don't hesitate to follow up. And we will also send all of the attendees a link with the results of the polls that we've sent out during the webinar. Thank you very much, everybody, and see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.